Today I'm in Toyota's fleet car favourite of the mid-90s, the Toyota Carina E. Before I start talking about the car, I just want to quickly tell you about this great wallet that Exeter have sent me to try. It is a multi-function thing. First of all, you can hide up to 5 cards and reveal them with a push of a button. Secondly, it's RFID shielded, so no one's going to skim your wallet and fraud you on your cards. And thirdly, you have a solar powered tracking card, which you can push a button on your phone and find the wallet with. Isn't that amazing? You can get yours by hitting the link in the description below. This is a car once so common you didn't even notice it on the streets, and now so rare you don't see it on the streets. It is a 1993 Toyota Carina E. In the early 90s, the fleet family large saloon hatchback market was fiercely contested. Cavalier and Sierra were the two big contenders, followed by Sierra versus Mondeo, of course. But there were other contenders you need to be aware of. The Carina E replaced the Carina 2 in late 1992 and was one of the first cars built at Toyota's Burniston factory in Derbyshire. So why is it a Carina E and not a Carina 3 as it followed on from the Carina 2? Well, because E stands for Europe. This was the car designed to take on the European market and, more importantly, signify this is built in Britain. But it was still a world car. The first few months of production started out in Japan, only coming on stream in Burniston in December 1992. In other parts of the world, it was known as the Corona rather than the Carina. And also the dimensions of this car are such that it fits within a particular tax bracket for the Japanese home market, so you can get below a certain tax threshold. And look at the styling of this thing. Okay, there is some styling on it. Look, there's a crease just here. Now, although Toyota are sometimes fantastic in the way they'll let their imagination run free and they'll go and put concept cars into production, which is a really adventurous and brave thing to do. For this particular market, they played extremely safe. So it's very conventional, very, very safe. Okay, the Cavalier and the Sierra aren't what you might call pretty, but they've got a certain something about them looks-wise, a bit of an edge, which this has to make up for in other ways. It's got a great personality. Under the bonnet of the Carina E, you've got the choice of a 1.6, a 1.8, a 2 litre GTI, a 2 litre diesel, and later on a 2 litre turbo diesel engine. Now this is a 4A FE 1.6 lean burn engine. I thought this was too early for a lean burn motor, but someone here at Toyota assures me the way it drives it definitely is, because you can feel the way it clicks over from the eco map to the more conventional, more powerful map. And yeah, he knows the cars well and is 100% certain this is lean burn, which gives you astonishing fuel economy, better in fact than some of the diesels. Just look at this interior, it is tweed-tastic. It's this hard-wearing, heavy wool, tweedy pattern, unlike some other Toyotas like the RAV4, which has got the mad, exciting 90s cool and fashionable thing. This is playing super safe with the heavy-duty greys and kind of muted colour highlights, just to try and lift it a little bit. This car's only got 25,000 miles on it, and this seat looks like it has never been sat in. These carpets are like new as well, so this is quite a treat to sit in here. Oh, spongy. The seats are very flat, just a tiny bit of support at the absolute edge. They're not sport seats by any means or any stretch of the word. Now, reading buying advice for these cars from a few years ago when they were quite a common second-hand car on the market, it suggested that most cars you were going to come across would have electric windows, a factory sunroof, a radio, possibly air conditioning, other goodies, because people spec them quite highly. This particular car has none of that. This is an XI model which sits fairly low in the range. It's got wind-up windows, an aftermarket pop-up sunroof by Britax, manual windows. It's got Toyota radio, okay, but not a lot else. It does have central locking though, which is nice. So I'm talking to you from inside the car because it is bitterly cold outside. Normally I'd walk around the car and show you other external parts of it, but right now it's way too chilly for that. And these cars were aimed squarely at the fleet market. It was the kind of thing where the fleet manager wanted a car that could be reliable, cost efficient, and good resale. But your savvy buyers looking for a sensible purchase were also drawn to this as well. So possibly more than some of the other big fleet players, this became a really strong contender in the family car market, because those people wanted exactly the same things. They wanted a reliable car that wasn't going to let them down, wasn't going to cost a lot to service, and wasn't going to depreciate. And this was it. But there were so many trim levels, you could have pretty much anything you wanted, from completely Spartan to totally loaded. There was X, XI, which is this, XL, GS, GL, GLI, S, CD, CDX, Executive, GTI, GSD, TD, and TDGL. So you could take your pick in terms of engine and trim. A lot of cars actually came without a radio, because adding a radio on a fleet purchase put the price up, so people would get given a company car with no radio and they would have to go and buy their own, which would be cheaper than maybe getting the dealer option fitted, because back in the 90s it was easy to fit a radio. It was just pins and out it came, and the wiring was in the dashboard waiting for you to just plug in. So what has this car got? Well, first of all, we've got a solid plastic door handle, blanking plate where electric windows would have been, central locking though, which is nice, kit fit windows, don't graze your knuckles on the heavy tweed, and a nice big door pocket, ideal for company car drivers with lots of maps, or family buyers wanting to put lots of sweets and keeping the kids entertained stuff. The steering wheel is big and kind of plain, but kind of elegant at the same time. It's like a very Japanese bit of art almost. And of course we have the important horn test. It's quite a nice little horn ring, isn't it? It's like a multi-tone thing going on there. This dash top is a lovely swooping thing that kind of flows across the top of the dashboard. Looks really good. And we still have a T-shelf. I'm very impressed with the addition of a T-shelf with a dividing line, so you can put your hobnobs on the right and your cup of tea on the left. Important T-shelf delineation matters. There are no cup holders in the glove box. I think we're past that era of car really, but it is a good size, big enough for... this is another car from the Toyota Heritage fleet, which has the owner's manual still in it. Rather wonderful. The switchgear is just Toyota parts bin stuff. There are a few things which are a little bit different, and a lot of stuff which is very much the same. Here below the air vent on the right hand side you've got your headlamp dipping dial, which is the same as in many other 90s Toyotas. Big air vents, actually very big air vents, really good quality. Big clear dashboard. The speedo is enormous. It goes up to 160, but I'm sure being a 1.6 eco engine, it doesn't do anywhere near that. Because they've only got speedo here and no rev counter, they've made all the dials, all three dials, just enormous. So you've got a huge speedo, a huge fuel gauge, and a huge temperature gauge, and just a couple of little warning light windows below that. This shows only 24,500 miles. This car is virtually new. It's quite phenomenal. Well, the plastics feel just fresh still. Here in the middle of the dashboard, we've got the same little digital clock we'll find in many other Toyotas of the era. The same hazard warning light switch, rear screen heater, and rear fog light switch. This is all stuff you kind of absolutely have to have. It's not anything they've added on because they felt generous. And here below this, we've got a Toyota 2150 radio cassette. It's an AM/FM receiver with a PLL synthesizer. I never did find out what a PLL synthesizer did. Must look that up one day. AM/FM switch. This is quite a curious bit of translation that's gone wrong on the front of the radio. The tuner, up and down frequency, is referred to as a sender. Sending the frequency up and down, I would guess. Below the radio we've got a handy little cubby, which is useful size for a phone and that kind of stuff these days. And below that, quite excitingly, so many 80s, 90s cars I've driven from Japan have got the same square, clicky dial for heating and ventilation control. This is far more modern looking. Got your big dials for direction and temperature, one slider for the power level and one slider for recirculate or not. Blanked off switch for aircon. Aircon was not fitted on this car sadly, but that's a noticeable progression in styling and design from earlier cars. Below the heating and ventilation we've got lighter socket and a little ashtray. This has never been used. Looking at it, it looks fresh as it came out the factory. This gear shift grabbed me for two reasons the moment I got in the car. First of all, it's the way that the rubber knob section kind of truncates so suddenly, and the leather gaiter or leather gaiter doesn't kind of meet it, so you've got this metal stick coming up. And secondly, the way it just kind of cants off to the side and twists, it looks like the kind of thing a hot rodder or a customizer has done to work around a particular engineering problem, trying to make a gearbox from something else fits. Obviously this is the correct gearbox to this car. It's just an unusual little quirk. We'll explore the gearbox later in a minute on the road. Now, behind that we've got three blanked off panels. Could be anything, but because there will be wires behind there for something, but they're not on this car. Sunroof perhaps? Fog lights? Who knows? Electric mirrors? Quite likely. Now, nice manual mechanical handbrake. I love this rather than a silly modern dibby thing. Big cubby hole here, great for a mobile phone these days. Handy for chocolate bars, I guess, back in the day. Not actually a cup holder, but you could probably put a cup in there. And a big cubby hole here. This is kind of a new innovation in the early 90s, having the big armrest cubby hole. So that's quite forward thinking and very practical indeed. You'd fit a lot of stuff in there. If you're going out for the day, definitely get your sandwiches in there, no problem. Because this is a fairly low spec car, that's kind of it. Let's have a look in the back and see how the kids will be faring. Well, the tweedathon continues back here. As you come in, you notice the lower parts of the doors are these big black vinyl sort of kick-proof things. Wipe clean kick-proof, I should say. Likewise, the back of the seats, instead of being material, is sensibly wipe clean. So if you've got the kids in the back kicking the back of the seat, spilling yogurt down there, that's all going to just wipe up off nice and easily. As in the front, we've got blanked off electric window switches, but manual winders. The locks in the back don't activate central locking, unfortunately. And we've got a little ashtray / litter bin here in the back of the car. And being the 90s and now safety conscious, we've got a pair of 3-point seat belts and a lap belt in the middle. Although the central seat belt, you're very much on the lump and it's not massively comfortable as you're kind of rocking side to side. This is the least favourite child's seat. There's one courtesy light here in the centre of the roof, well placed as you've got the sunroof in there. And I believe it's a standard Toyota part found in many other Toyota cars. Moving back into the boot now. Now to access the boot you have two choices. You can use the key or you can put a little tag by the driver's footwell, which is fairly common on Toyotas of this era. Once you're in there, the boot is cavernous. It goes so far back, I can barely even reach it. It's wide, this lip is quite deep and the opening is a bit narrow, so although you've got lots of space, it's not the easiest space to get stuff into, but it is a lot of space once you're in there. There's a little light up here in a protective cage, how cute, to illuminate your darkened space, and underneath the floor, there is what looks like a full-size spare wheel, but it's screwed in, so I'm going to leave it as it is. The seats do fold down, but the opening is fairly small, so it's more like a giant ski hatch rather than a practical, usable fold-down rear seat. This car does classify as a retro, as there's no grab hand in the back to pull the lid down. Now, engine's running, I can turn the heater on at last. Now, once again, indicators and lights are on the right-hand stalk, wipers on the left, typical Japanese car of the day. Pedals are all really light, and so is the steering, obviously power assisted in this kind of car. It feels like you're going quite quickly, but we only accelerated to 30 just then. You may have noticed when I was talking about the steering wheel earlier, there's no airbag. That didn't become available until the facelift in 1994, and then in 1995 they added ABS and driver and passenger airbags as standard. It's a big safety upgrade all round there. It really is incredible to think how common these things were. After they started production in Derbyshire in December 1992, they produced 100,000 cars in under 2 years, which is just a phenomenal rate of production. And to see, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I saw one of these on the road now, it's just ridiculous. That weirdly canted gear knob is actually quite nicely placed. And it falls just perfectly into your hand. First, second, third are all just right. It's a 5-speed box. There was a 4-speed auto available as well, should you desire such a thing. I think that would only really be preferable if you were driving one of the bigger engine cars. I don't think the 1.6 Eco would have been particularly fun with that. There were two other tax-friendly economy options. You had the 2-litre diesel, normally aspirated, which honestly I wouldn't touch with a barge pole, and there was the turbocharged one, which was a typical 90s turbo diesel. Bit of grunt, pretty decent economy. Although, to be fair, judging by contemporary reports rather than actual figures, this lean burn 1.6 is probably the better option because it's a bit smoother, a bit quieter, and gets comparable economy. As I say, there was also the GTI version, which got the 2-litre engine out of the Celica. Well, that does, apparently, I've not driven one, but I'm told it sounds more exciting than it actually is. The driving experience is fine. It's not exciting. It doesn't will you to press on and push through a corner. It's safe, it's reassuring. It's the kind of car you're happy to put your family in and take on a drive somewhere because you're sure you're going to reach the other end of that journey safely, without incident. If I take it round a roundabout a bit rapidly, it starts to lean quite heavily. Bear in mind, there's only 20 miles an hour. No, sorry, 25 miles an hour. And it felt like it was going to start running out and understeering before too long. But that's the kind of safe, predictable handling you want in a big family car. You don't want to be getting the tail out on a roundabout in the wet. You want it to be predictably sticking and going where you want it to go. So they've done it. They've engineered a car to do what a car is meant to do. So well done, guys. Well done. Now, as I say, the E in Carina E does mean the car was engineered and designed to appeal to European tastes, and in particular UK driving styles, which was, shall we say, more enthusiastic than in some parts of the world. But having said that, I'm not quite sure what they meant in that respect, because they've engineered a car which is far more in tune with someone wanting a comfortable ride rather than an exhilarating ride. And comfortable it is. These seats don't offer masses of lateral support, but they do give you a nice, comfortable ride. Could do with a little bit more lower back support, if I'm honest. But, you know, this is where seat design had reached in 1992. Visibility is good. We're starting to get to the point where rollover rules, in particular in America, mean that the A posts and B posts are getting a bit thicker. So there's a little bit of a blind spot just there, but nowhere near as bad as the current car, but not quite as clear as you would find in a car from the 70s or 80s. I'm really lucky to be driving this car today. It belongs to Toyota, it's on their heritage fleet, and as I say, it's only got 24,500 miles on it, and it looks and feels basically like a new car. It even drives like a new car as well. It's quite amazing to be in. This car was Toyota's attempt to infiltrate the fleet market, which was the real big money cash cow back in the early 90s and actually all through the 80s as well, really. It did astonishingly well from more or less a standing start with the Carina 2. They really did shoehorn their way in and give Ford and Vauxhall a bit of a fright. The thing is, it's just easy to drive. It's a kind of car that anyone who's got a passing idea of how a car operates can just climb into and just pull away and go. It's not the kind of car that scares you or intimidates you. Certain cars with, I don't know, whether the controls are a bit goofy, the level of power, the way you sit on the floor and can't really see out, all kinds of reasons, are just a bit scary to get behind the wheel of. This thing is just welcoming and easy. You could be a learner about to drive for the first time at 17, you could be 90 and on the verge of giving up driving, and still, this is the kind of car they'll just forgive everything. It'll let you get by. Of course, 90s Japanese car, indicators and lighters on the right hand stalk, wipers are on the left. You get used to it very quickly. The only thing that's really not absolutely foolproof or childproof simple on this car is this gear shift is just a little bit notchy. Slightly rubbery touch and a little bit firm and notchy going into each gear. But that aside, it's really simple. The steering is kind of low geared and it does understeer a bit, as I said earlier. So going through sort of twisty country lanes, it does feel like you're having more of an adventure than you actually are, because the car does lean quite significantly. Even at sort of 30 miles an hour or so, there's a fair degree of roll in the body. But that does give a nice, comfortable ride, a gentle ride. And even after, how many years is this? This car is about 25 years old. That's a shocking thing to think, that really. It looks so new. It looks so, well, modern really still. It just kind of hasn't aged. The styling is inoffensive in a way that didn't make a statement in one way or another. And so it hasn't become a thing of a time. It's not decisively early 90s, it's just car. But yeah, as I was saying, 25 years old, no creaks, no rattles, still feels very much like a new car. If they built cars in this style today, which they obviously don't. Back when this car was launched, the phrase was, the car in front is a Toyota. And what they meant, I believe, by that was in terms of quality, reliability, in terms of longevity. if you bought a car from Toyota, it wasn't going to let you down. And they were famous for it, and rightly so. There was a time when 3/4 of the world's population, the first car they saw was a Land Rover. That number very quickly began to form the Land Cruiser came on the market, because suddenly you could get to any part of the world and get home again. You may well be able to fix a series Land Rover with a toothbrush and a piece of string, but the Land Cruiser you didn't need to. And the same goes for these things. If you had appointment after appointment to get to up and down the M1, this is the car that wasn't going to leave you stranded on the hard shoulder. It may not be as exciting as a Cavalier SRI, but it's certainly more dependable. Driving it today, the steering wheel rim, well, it looks quite pretty. It feels a little bit narrow and a bit small. It's not as comfortable as the bigger, thicker rimmed wheels are today. All the controls have got an interesting kind of rubbery feel to them. They are rubbery because they're made of, well, a kind of rubber, but it's kind of different to anything I've really come across. It's a bit different really. It's not like the hard, smooth plastic some cars have, and it's not like the fake leather feeling you get otherwise. It is actually a genuinely rubberized feeling. Can't quite put a finger on what it feels like. Now the performance from this 1.6 litre engine is interesting because it sounds like you're really quite revving hard and giving it a lot of go, but in reality you're not picking up that much speed from it. In a similar vein to that 1.8 Cavalier I drove recently, this is a fun car to drive. It's interesting to be in because it's so different to anything else on the road today. But is it a car I would want as a daily retro? Well, in one respect, yes, because I know it's a really reliable daily retro. I could go and turn the key every day, just keep it wax oiled and under sealed, keep on top of any kind of rust problems, and it will be a dependable long-term solution. But is it exciting and interesting in the way that I would want a retro daily to be? I don't know. I think it's interesting because you just don't see them anymore. It's interesting to see how Toyota saw the European market at the time of what they wanted their car to look like. But is it exciting enough to want to own one? That's another question. As you just gently kind of waft over the bumps and imperfections in the road, that's quite nice. It smooths out the bad parts, but then you get to a corner, wow, that does understeer. Okay, I need nav now. I don't know where I am or where I'm going. I'm lost. Oh, bother. I love it when Apple Maps says head southeast or northwest.
Turn left onto Wonnet's Lane.
And you look around and go, well, I don't know, which side is the lichen growing on that tree trunk? Where's north? It's really not helpful, Apple Maps. Because this is the kind of car that was bought by fleet markets and families who wanted to use it for taking the kids on holiday and this kind of stuff, I'm amazed this car has survived with absolutely no miles on it. It must have been someone buying it as like a retirement present to themselves or something and then barely used it. And being the economical, low-spec kind of car, it is that kind of thing where someone's bought a car to see them out and then they've not really driven much after that. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in a very early Toyota Carina E, the future of motoring as it was in 1993. If you enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you can see bell notification down there, I think. Bell notification so you can see when more new exciting stuff is appearing. And I'll see you again next time, very soon.